Something had shifted. I was no longer afraid of death, but I had begun to fear something else. An empty life. A life lived without meaning. A life where I was a doctor but forgot how to feel. A life where I woke up each morning without knowing who I was waking up for. That evening, they moved me to a recovery room. Alone. No family, no phone, no news. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt full, as if an entire world was whispering through every cell in my body. I lay still in the ICU, just me, the dim light, and the rhythm of the machines. I looked out the window and saw the ambulance lights still flickering across a city that hadn't had time to grieve. Out there, life carried on. But inside me, 242 souls still lingered, whispering something only my heart could hear. I placed my hand on my chest, feeling the weak but steady beat. I closed my eyes, not to forget, but to remember. I had to live for those who no longer could. And I smiled, softly, then whispered, "I'm home." I once saw myself from above, not knowing if I was dead or alive. Now I know. I had died. But it was that very death that gave me the chance to finally begin living.
Before the world exploded on a bright June afternoon, I was just an ordinary person with an extraordinary calling. My name is Claire Whitmore, 22 years old, a final-year medical student in the Emergency and Trauma Department at BJ Medical College. I wasn't great at everything, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Human life doesn't wait. So I didn't wait either. I ran. I worked night shifts. I learned to listen to the frantic rhythm of a failing heartbeat, the gasp of struggling breath, the silent panic in a patient's eyes when they realized they were teetering on the edge. I learned not to collapse when the first patient I ever tried to save didn't make it. I learned how to nod while their family wept. I learned how to keep standing, even when thousands of cracks splintered inside me, never fully patched. That morning was just like any other. I grabbed a protein bar, checked in with the night shift team, and then headed to the cafeteria. I remember standing in line with Alina, a first-year student who always called me Sister Claire when she asked about lab values and test results. Alina had this wide-eyed seriousness, like she truly believed that if you studied hard enough, everything would turn out okay. I used to believe that too, until I learned the hard truth that some things can't be saved by knowledge alone. I remember I was laughing, telling Alina about the time I snapped a syringe needle during my very first night shift. Then came the explosion. The ground shook, glass walls shattered, and a wave of searing white flame tore through the building like a formless tsunami. It all happened in less than the time it takes for a heart to beat. A flash of light, then nothing. I don't remember how far I was thrown. I just remember the sharp, freezing pain along my back, the chaotic pounding of my heart, and the acrid stench of burning plastic. I tried to move, but nothing responded. Someone might have been calling my name, or maybe I imagined it. I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I no longer had control over my body, and for the first time in my life, I, Claire, the doctor, felt completely powerless. Inside me, a strange kind of fear began to rise. Not fear of dying, but fear not finishing what I was born to do. Fear of not holding my mother one last time. Of not calling my younger brother to say I'm sorry. Of not reminding the elderly patient on the third floor that I had updated her medication according to the new protocol. Fear that I had lived too fast to ever truly live. I felt a drop of water hit my cheek. I thought it was raining. But when I looked up, I didn't see the sky. I saw smoke. And when I looked down, I saw myself. Again. My body was lying there, eyes closed, lips turning blue. A thin stream of blood trickled from my forehead down past my ear. I was seeing myself from somewhere else, somewhere not part of the living. And I found myself wondering, am I dead? Or is this the moment I truly begin to live? But then, as I crossed into a place beyond life, I met them, the ones who had already died, and what they told me changed everything. I thought I was ready. Ready for it all. The heart to stop, the blood to cease, the light to fade. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. I didn't open my eyes. I had no eyes to open. And yet I saw. A total darkness surrounded me, formless, boundless. No hospital ceiling, no bed, no beeping machines. Just a thick, unmoving blackness, silent and endless. So deep it felt like I was being swallowed into memories that had never existed. I tried to call my name, but no sound came. There was no throat, no breath. But somehow I still knew I was still me, only I no longer belonged to the world I once called real. When panic began to rise, something happened. A stream of light appeared, not bright, not blinding, but soft, like mist, moving slowly, as if it were breathing. It didn't light up the space around me. It lit something inside me, as though someone were gently unlocking the deepest layers of memory I had long buried. And then I heard it. Not a human voice, a kind of sound not produced by any object, yet echoing like wind blowing through the soul. Do not be afraid. You are in between. In between what? Between where? I didn't know. But I could feel another kind of life, one that didn't depend on oxygen or heartbeats, beginning to surround me. Then the light extended, stretching out in front of me, revealing what felt like a gate, without hinges, without a handle, just a soft, shimmering boundary where darkness ended and something else began. I moved toward it, not with feet, not with a body, but with the very essence of my existence. And the moment I crossed that threshold, everything changed. No more darkness, no more emptiness. Before me opened a vast, formless space. A garden? A heaven? A spiritual realm? I had no name for it, but I saw stars drifting through the air, heard sounds that had color, and watched memories float like sparkling dust. Each step, or whatever you'd call it, brought me closer to something I couldn't describe. Not God, not a deity, but a being made of light. It had no form, yet it was. It said nothing, yet it made me feel everything deeper than language could ever express. I wasn't judged. I wasn't praised. I was simply shown that every act I had ever done, every person I had touched, every glance I had once exchanged, all of it left a trace. No trace was ever lost. And for the first time in my life, I understood that my existence, no matter how small it seemed, carried eternal weight in this realm. I had thought this place was the end, but it wasn't. It was only a threshold. And beyond that threshold, souls were waiting for me. They weren't waiting to say goodbye. They were waiting to ask me to bring them back in a way I had never imagined possible. I don't know how long I drifted through that garden of light. There was no time, no gravity, only the sense that I was being guided, not by someone, but by the silent intentions of the souls around me. And then they appeared. Not with sound, not with shock, as if they had always been there, simply waiting for me to notice. The first one I saw was Alina, the first-year student who used to laugh with me in the cafeteria. Her long black hair still floated gently, as if caught in a breeze, but her eyes, those eyes, no longer held the innocence I remembered. They carried something deeper, something both painful and radiant, as if she had seen far more than any first-year medical student was ever meant to. "Sister Claire," she whispered, "I didn't get to graduate, but you can still save the ones I never got the chance to reach." I wanted to hold her. I wanted to cry. But here, tears didn't fall. They simply turned into light and spread outward. Then came another figure, a man in a white coat. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and full of life. I knew him instantly. Dr. Harold Monroe, the teacher I respected more than anyone. He had retired 3 years ago after his battle with cancer, and I thought he had already passed from this world.
But it turns out he too had been on that ill-fated flight. He smiled at me, the same gentle smile that once silenced an entire lecture hall. "Claire," he said, "you once asked me what it means to be a real doctor. This is your answer. Not the one who knows how to heal, but the one who's willing to sacrifice themselves so that one more soul might live one more day."
I collapsed, not with my body, but with my heart. A little girl stepped forward. She held a stuffed rabbit tightly in her arms, her bare feet gliding softly across the luminous ground. I didn't recognize her, but she recognized me. "You're the one who couldn't save my mom." Her voice held no blame, just the truth. And suddenly, I remembered the pregnant woman I tried to resuscitate 2 years ago and couldn't. I never knew she had a child, but now I did. "It's okay," the little girl whispered. "I've already seen my mother. Now it's your turn to meet yourself." I thought that moment would be the last, but another figure appeared, a man I had never met before. He wore a military uniform, a small badge on his chest. No name, no flag, but in his eyes was the weight of an entire war. "I survived the battlefield," he said, "but died on the way to a medical conference because of a delayed flight. Life has a twisted sense of humor, but if you return, save one person I never got to. That's how you live for me." I stood there, surrounded by 4 souls, 4 stars that had crossed my life, and I knew I was no longer the Claire I used to be. I was someone who now carried fragments of memory, pieces of dreams, and the unfinished missions of those who were gone. They didn't ask me to stay, but they didn't let me leave empty-handed either. They gave me responsibility. I thought I had already met everyone I was meant to meet. I thought my heart had reached the deepest depths of emotion. But then the sky of that otherworldly realm began to crack quietly, gently, as if a door was opening, not above me, but from within my very soul. And then they came. Not one by one, but all at once. 241 souls. Men and women, with names, with jobs, with children, with mothers, with unfinished breakfasts, with apologies left unsaid, with dreams left half-written. They stood in a great arc surrounding me, not saying a single word, yet each of them began to project into me images, not with their eyes, but with their memories. I saw a 72-year-old woman carrying her husband's ashes home one last time. I saw a Kenyan graduate student preparing to deliver his first ever doctoral presentation. I saw a 5-year-old girl clutching her Elsa doll, flying for the first time in her life. I saw a father holding a plane ticket to finally meet the child he'd never seen. I saw a woman pregnant with twins. I saw a newlywed couple still wearing their matching honeymoon t-shirts. I saw the things no news article ever mentions, the things no one imagines when they read the passenger list. They didn't cry. They didn't blame. They just looked at me with the eyes of those who already know everything and hoped I would understand. A man with a thick beard stepped forward. His voice was deep but gentle. "We don't need you to carry our sorrow," he said. "We just need you to live, but live in a way none of us ever had the chance to." A woman in a purple sari came closer. "Save one more patient. Love one more time. Forgive one more person. Spend time with your mother. Finish the letter you left unwritten. That's all. That's enough." I stood frozen. I, Claire Whitmore, a resident doctor who once believed she could not bear another death, was now being entrusted with 241 unfinished lives. I couldn't say no. I didn't need to say yes, because my heart had already softened, and the only thing I wanted was to return, to live as a composite of all of them,
One by one, the souls stepped forward and touched my shoulder. Each touch was light as a feather, yet carried the weight of a mountain. A small child kissed my forehead. An elderly man nodded solemnly. A young man placed his hand over my chest, right where my heart beats. I was no longer just me. I was them. I was their hope. I was their legacy. And once again, the being of light appeared. It said nothing, yet I heard clearly, "You may stay here in peace forever, or you may return with all of this weight and all of these gifts." I looked back at them. No one urged me, but their eyes, like flames in a midnight sky, told me what I already knew. I had to go back, not because I was special, but because I still could. I nodded, not with my head, but with my will. And in that instant, the world shattered, like a sphere of light bursting open. I feel not with a body, but as a thought, a pure intention. I soared past thousands of memories, millions of sounds, billions of colors, until I stopped. On an operating table, inside my body. I heard the machines, their steady rhythm, the long, drawn-out beep, beep, pulling me back from a place impossibly far away. I heard the rush of footsteps, a voice yelling, "She's showing signs of consciousness." But all those sounds, lively and urgent, still felt like they came from another room, from another life. And then a breath, not from anyone else, from me. I was breathing. But this time, not because my lungs were functioning, but because my soul had chosen to return. It wasn't survival, it was rebirth. I wasn't someone who had just escaped death. I was someone who had walked back from it, carrying with me the whispers of 241 souls from that plane, and Alina's final message, and the hundreds of touches, and a light no one else could see but me. I opened my eyes. They stung not from smoke, but from something inside my heart that had finally broken open. And in that breaking, I knew I was no longer empty. The nurse by my bedside wept. A doctor grabbed my hand, repeating over and over, "Claire, Claire, can you hear me?" I didn't answer. I just smiled softly, the first true smile since I understood what it means to be alive. I looked around. The hospital lights were cold, the walls are white, the bedsheets are white, but I wasn't afraid of white anymore, because now I knew the real light doesn't come from what we see, it lives in what we carry when our eyes are closed. Someone placed my hand over my chest. I felt the heartbeat, weak but steady. I touched myself gently, just to be sure, just to confirm I was here. And I whispered, "I heard you. I won't waste this." And I knew from that moment on, I wasn't living just one life. I was living 243 lives, intertwined, circling, quietly guiding me forward. But even though I had awakened, the world was no longer the same. And within it was one question I couldn't avoid. Why was I chosen, and not them? I lay there in that white hospital room, surrounded by the steady hum of ventilators and the cold glow of fluorescent lights. But inside me was a different sky. No more wreckage, no more blood, no more screaming, only the quiet echo of 242 souls now resting gently within me. A nurse scribbled notes beside my bed. A doctor silently adjusted my blood pressure monitor. No one asked what happened. Maybe they thought I wasn't ready. And they were right. I wasn't ready to tell. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I was ready to live differently. I closed my eyes not to sleep, but to remember. The eyes of a little girl holding a stuffed rabbit. Dr. Monroe's solemn nod. The soldier's whisper, "Save one more life." These were no longer just memories. They were fuel. They were my second breath. They were the part of me I never knew I could become.
Something had shifted. I was no longer afraid of death. But I had begun to fear something else, an empty life, a life lived without meaning, a life where I was a doctor but forgot how to feel, a life where I woke up each morning without knowing who I was waking up for. That evening, they moved me to a recovery room, alone. No family, no phone, no news. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt full, as if an entire world was whispering through every cell in my body. I lay still in the ICU, just me, the dim light, and the rhythm of the machines. I looked out the window and saw the ambulance lights still flickering across a city that hadn't had time to grieve. Out there, life carried on. But inside me, 242 souls still lingered, whispering something only my heart could hear. I placed my hand on my chest, feeling the weak but steady beat. I closed my eyes not to forget, but to remember. I had to live for those who no longer could. And I smiled, softly, then whispered, "I'm home." I once saw myself from above, not knowing if I was dead or alive. Now I know. I had died. But it was that very death that gave me the chance to finally begin living.